Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop. We have a challenge project here today. There was a family not too far away that brought me I believe it was a fiddle, I think it was, that I set up for them. It was another instrument. To be honest, it was a while back now and I don't really remember. But then they were talking about another instrument that they had that they really needed fixed, and so I asked her to show it to me so that when she came back to pick up the other instrument, she brought the other one that needed work. And here it is. This is one of those that everyone pronounces it differently. I call it a Takamine. I don't know if that's the proper pronunciation or not. Let's see if you can see the label there. Hopefully that'll give you the information on the instrument. It says a GS330S. And what's the problem with it? Well, the bridge is coming off. It's lifting off. And because money sounded like it was the issue, I decided to try to work with them and see if I could help them get it fixed, for a reasonable price. So we settled on $150 max, In other words, I charge basically 80 bucks an hour. So this means I have to do this in under 2 hours in order for me to come out. And I think I can. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll see how it goes. Well, the first thing we're going to have to do is get rid of these strings. Very tight pins. If the pins are tight, sometimes you can poke the wire back down through and that will loosen them up, but not so much here, it doesn't look like. This is the kind of thing that creates the cost on the money because it just takes longer than it should. That one was loose, but there was no string in that one. Well, no sooner than I got started, I got interrupted, which happens around here quite often. But we're back on the clock now. I stopped the clock while I was interrupted there. That's the beauty of having this time clock. That is really wonderful. You can just go over and punch it in, punch it out, and then that way I know exactly how much time I worked on the instrument. Really is very nice. I recommend it to anybody that's doing this type of work, or any kind of service work for that matter. It's really handy. Okay, when I got interrupted, I went ahead and plugged in my homemade heater. As you can see here, it's pretty much up to temperature already. So let's lay this on there. And I've got my bridge removal tools. This is my go-to tool right here. I'm going to heat it up on top of this just by setting it on top of here like this. And old glue and everything gets on this thing because of using it under these bridges. So heating it up like this melts that old glue, and I can just pull it off with a rag generally. Someone recommended that I put a D handle on this so it doesn't flop over, and that's a good idea. I may do that down the road, but right now that's the handle I have. I like this handle. It's a handy handle to use, but it does cause it to want to flop over. By heating the knife up, you can slide it in under there much easier too. It just cuts the glue very easy that way. It's getting pretty darn hot, so it's about ready to come off. It isn't. It looks like this is going to be an easy one to get off. It's glued really well along the front edge, so I'm going to try to work this in under the front edge. I can tell it's going to lift the finish here on the front if I don't work from the front. And I don't like to work from the front because it leaves a scar easier because it's not been lifted from the front. It's much tighter in the front. So I typically like to work from the back, but sometimes you just have to switch tactics. I'm trying to hurry because I want to keep the cost down, or at least, because if I can do it for under 150, I'd like to do that. Because I know, money is important to everybody, including me. I think the bridge itself is hot enough now, so I'm going to take this off and just put and off camera, I'll just put the knife on there and heat it up and work it under here. I kind of got a kick out of one comment. Somebody was trying to show what they know, and they said, why did you use aluminum for that heater? Don't you know, aluminum doesn't conduct heat very well? Why do you think they put stainless steel bottoms on aluminum pots? And I just chuckled to myself. Aluminum is one of the very most heat conductive materials there is, at least in metals. I mean, there's others that are better, I'm sure. Okay, I should have thought about this. I'm sure there's bolts in here, and there are. Actually, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like there's just actual wood screws. It's a regular wood screw going through right here where these holes are. The bridge itself is now loose. I can tell. It's just that we got to get these buttons out so that we can get to these screws. I could probably force it up and just pull the screws right through. I'm not going to reuse the screws anyway. And, because I'm afraid by pulling this out, I'm going to tear this up and create another problem. So I'm just going to see if these will just pull through there, because there's very little wood there. I would much prefer just to not have to deal with those screws and have to take this off the top, because that's just going to create more work and more things to fix. And I know some of you are cringing right now, but when you've done this as many times as I have, I know what to expect, It's not going to pop out, it doesn't look like. Not easily anyway. So I guess I'm going to have to find a way to get them out of there. Just to make it that much more complicated, the plastic cover is way down inside the hole. So I think I'm just going to cut my losses, take a drill bit, and just drill that plastic out. That'll be easier than if I start digging around it. I'm just going to make big scars, and the plastic is sacrificial in my opinion in this case. Got my metric drill bits out because most everything these days is metric like this. And my guess is we're in the neighborhood of a 5mm. So let's see here. Yeah, that might be just a fraction big. Here's a 4.5mm. And that's actually seems like it's a fraction small. The 5mm actually is pretty close. Yeah, I think the 5mm is right on the money. So that's what I'm going to try, is use the 5mm bit and just see if I can get rid of that plastic that's covering up those screws. We'll just fill it with black filler and call it good. It's a thicker plastic than I thought it was going to be, that's for sure. I would have never got that dug out. Wow, that's amazing how thick that is. Well, that was the right decision to to cut that out of there, because that was really thick. Unfortunately, it chipped the bridge right there. I saw the chip for a second, but I lost it. I don't know where it went. We'll just have to fill it. Sorry about that part, but sometimes stuff like that happens. My guess is that it's a Phillips screw head. I don't really know that for sure. Yeah, I think so, now that I can, yeah. Yeah, drilling it out was the only option though, because that was really thick. A lot thicker than I thought it was going to be. I figured it was just going to be, like a millimeter thick, but it was probably 5 millimeters thick at least. The bridge is off of it in pretty fast time. Let's see here about how much time we're into it already. We're into it for about 12 minutes, something like that. So we're not into it too deep yet. I think I'm going to have to clean the bridge off first, and then lay it on there and mark around it. The wood has pulled off of there, as you can see, and I believe that was even done before I started because of the way it was pulled up so much in the back. This is the one with the teeth, and I'm going to go across this and just cut the old wood that's on there off, and it's glue too, so this will take me down to plain bridge, and it looks like I'm probably cutting a lot of wood off, but there's really not very much here. It's probably the thickness of a couple of sheets of paper, something like that. You never know how much work you're getting into on these things. You really don't. So it's hard to estimate them. I always try to estimate them a little high so the customer's not disappointed. Almost no one is ever disappointed when you charge them less than you tell them. This is one of those cases where they only glued the center of the bridge down. The outer edges of this bridge weren't glued. And I don't know what kind of glue it was, but it's not a very good glue, I can tell that. You've got to wonder why they would use a junky product building instruments in a factory. It just doesn't make sense. There you go. I believe that's got her cleaned up, and that also puts little teeth in there at the same time, which makes it better for the glue adhesion. Now we'll vacuum up this mess, and then we'll trace around this bridge. My vacuum just drops right out of the ceiling here, which is one of the most handy things I've ever done in my shop. And then I've got my remote control to my dust collection system. Okay, the thing we need to do now is locate the bridge in the proper place here. We're not going to go into the intonation and all that kind of detail, because if we did, we'd spend way too much time on this. I'm just going to locate it where it used to be and assume it's correct. And it should be pretty close. All right, I've got it there. I'm going to trace around it with a very pointy X-Acto knife blade. You have to be very careful doing this because you can really make a big scratch or mess. I've done it a lot, so I feel fairly confident doing it, but I can tell you for sure you can really make a mess doing this. And as you can see, the cut mark is far outside of where it was glued. So you can tell they didn't do much of a precision job on that. Just took a blade out of a planer and stuck it in this handle. Very handy for this kind of work because the blade has got a curved bottom. A flat bottom chisel just digs in too much. This just really works good. And with that score mark there, I can just lift this up and it'll take it off right up to the score line there. And it chips it right at the score line. So I don't have to be too terribly careful, as long as I don't actually go all the way to the score line with my tool. See, by having that extra, I don't know, what do you want to call that, 3/16 all the way around? That's an extra 3/16 of gluing surface in the front, especially in the front here, and in the back too. So that's a much bigger surface now that's going to be holding that bridge down than what they glued from the factory. Why they do it that way, I have no idea. Well, I do have an idea. I mean, I know it's a quicker cost thing, to save money is all it is. That looks pretty darn fine. Let's see how it sits on there, see if it's wobbling around too much. I'm going to try to knock down just a little bit of high in the middle here. Very lightly using the finger plane, and I'm just hitting the highest spots. So there's how fast you can do that. We're going to get this glue spread on here and get the clamps on it. This is one of those places where you don't want to cheat contact. You want to make sure you get perfect glue coverage everywhere, and this is the way to do it. You put the glue on both surfaces. You get to do this one time if you do it right. If you don't do it right, you get to do it several times. A little bit too much glue, so when you get just a little too much, it's better off just to wipe a little bit of it off before you even go with it. And now the bridge sits in there without moving, as you can see. I'm trying to move it, and it sits perfectly in that hole that I've cut out there. Because when you take that finish out, that finish, it just sits down inside the finish like that, and it won't move. It's perfect. You can see here what it looks like after I got it all clamped up. And it's been sitting now for nearly 4 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and take the clamps off of it now. We should be able now to fill these holes and work on that while the rest of it is continuing to dry. People are continually asking me why I don't use sawdust and things like that to fill holes and, glue and that type of thing. It's just such a more time-consuming process. I've done it many times over the years, thousands of times I've done it. But the problem is that the glue always shrinks, so you end up having to do it 2 or 3 times, and especially if it's a big hole. And these are huge holes. So, these are very deep holes. So I'm going to fill them with this Timbermate wood filler. And this stuff stains very well. And it doesn't shrink very much. Now, on holes this large, more than likely even this will shrink. And more than likely we'll have to fill it again. But that's not too bad considering how big these holes are. It's going to actually take several hours to dry because of the holes being so large. Yes, I know I could have put it on in different layers and let it dry, and I know that that's the better way to do it, but when you're doing production work, you have to go for it the best way you can. So there you go. There you go. It's all fixed up. We'll stop the clock. Well, there you go. That's pretty quick. 59 minutes from start to finish. So that'll give you some idea. That's the first time I've really told anyone how long it takes me to do something. 59 minutes from start to finish on one of those. Now that was an easy one. It came off easy, so that was part of it. I was going to look at the action and throw in an action adjustment if necessary because, I know it's for young kids to learn to play on, so I want it to play easy. So let me just check real quick with my gauge here. I get gazillions of questions about this gauge. This gauge, again, I'll show you, is an in size The model number is 4630-1E. Let's see what we've got here. I think the action's fairly high, actually. It's about 120 right there. And it's about 90 here. That's not too bad on this side. Maybe 100. Down here it's pretty high too. It's about 30 thousandths down here. So down here is where I'm really worried about it, or concerned about it, because that's where everybody plays, especially young kids learning. So I'm going to adjust this here. I'm not going to do that on the clock. I'm going to give them a break on that. Incidentally, I want to tell you that these strings, I'm not charging them for the strings either. These were donated by Colin to the channel, so or at least I believe it was Colin. I hope that's right. Colin, thank you very much. If I got that wrong, somebody correct me, but I apologize if I got it wrong. I believe it was Colin. I get so much nice stuff that people send me that it's really hard to keep it all straight. So I'm throwing the strings in free because I got them free. I think that does it. That didn't take long, and now the action's nice and close. You can see, maybe you can see it's not even moving the strings hardly at all as you press it down now. Give you a little closer look at that. You can see it's just barely having to be moved to go down. So, and no buzzing, so it's good. And the action, that would have lowered the action back here some, not a lot, but some. Actually did pretty good. That was about 120. It lowered it by about 10 back here. Yeah, that's right on 90, which isn't terrible. So it's not terrible back here. It's, it could be a little lower, but I think we're in good shape now. This will make it nice and easy for the kids to play. Here's what she sounds like. I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching my videos. I'm sure the customer's going to be quite happy with the low bill.